chess, nonsense, and analysis. Hi, dear viewer. So today we're going to conclude our coverage of the Sharjah Masters International. Basically, today was the last round, round nine. And yeah, before I tell you what actually happened, so we yesterday I profiled the young player Faustino Oro, the 11-year-old. Yeah, unfortunately, he lost again today in the last round. He played another youngster, Grand Master, Luke Mendonca from India, a very strong player, 26-30. Luke is, of course, older than him. Luke must be, what, 15, 16, somewhere there, if I'm not mistaken, maybe more, a little bit. Um, but nonetheless, the youngster had a very good tournament, 4 out of 9 in this field. Is still a very good result, and I'm sure he's still going to win a lot of rating points. But at the end of the day, the tournament was won by Anish Giri. Well done to him. A brilliant tournament, and he played very consistently throughout the event. Yeah, in this round, he beat Grandmaster Mittal Aditya from India. And yeah, he had to win because the other player who also had who was close to him. Let's put it that way. Because he had 6 and Abdusatorov also had 6, right? But Abdusatorov drew against Tabatabai from Grandmaster from Iran, a very strong player, 26-70. And then however, the other player who could have caught him was I'm looking at the list here. Exactly, was Indic, because Indic had 5.5, and he won with the black pieces, and so he had 6.5. And so Anish Giri had 6, and he was playing with white. So they had finished already, and his game was still going on, but he managed to win. Let's have a look at this game. I was quite impressed with the tactics that he used. Well, not the tactics in terms of fireworks, but I mean the method. Let's rather put it that way. So let's jump into it. Plays knight f3, and then he plays e3. This is a very interesting method, and the player who had used this a lot has been in recent years Magnus Carlsen. In some games he plays like this. So basically, white is playing as if he's playing with the black pieces, right? Because let's imagine, let's say for example in terms of Indian, if white plays d4, black plays knight f6. If c4, black would play e6. That would be, an invitation to an IMSO. But also if white plays some knight f3, black plays e6. This setup, right? So now if you look at it, Anish Giri is doing this with the white pieces. So basically it means that he'll have a small advantage. It won't be anything significant to write home about, but nonetheless, he will move the game out of theory as well. And of course, the point is that if you know that your opponent is going to play like this, maybe you could study a certain setup, and then you would find the differences, right? But that would mean that you would have to prepare, you'll be having black pieces, but prepare as if you're white, which is not very likely. So it's a very useful manner of playing that young players may also adopt. Not always, but in some games, some important games. So look at this. He's playing with the black pieces. Bishop e2. But he's playing white, but I mean, he's treating it like with the black, as if he's playing with the black pieces, because white hasn't decided what to play. I mean, if white plays like, let's say, bishop f5, excuse me, now I'm saying white, black. If black plays bishop f5, e6, it's as if the black would be playing a London system, right? But it would be with reverse colors. So the opponent plays c5. So now he plays d4. So it's an invitation to, shall we say, a queen's gambit. The opponent plays knight c6, and he plays d takes c5. So he's using the fact that he's got this extra tempo and takes on c5. The opponent plays e6 and now a3. So of course, if the opponent were to take back, he would play b4, b4, bishop b2, c4, with some small advantage. So the opponent plays a5. Yes, this in itself is not too significant, but it's something, because now the b5 square could be soft and could be used later on, right? So he plays c4, bishop takes knight c6. So what we are having is we're having a queen's gambit accepted with colors reversed. So we are having a position, just to illustrate, dear viewer, let us say d4, d5, c4, pawn takes pawn, right? Knight f3, knight f6. This would be like sort of, let's say, a queen's gambit. a6, a4, e6, knight c3, c5, bishop takes c4, bishop e7, castles, knight c6, like this, right? This would be the position that we would be having with the queen's gambit accepted. But now we're having this position with colors reversed. And yeah, with colors. So black is well, he's a move ahead, Anish. And the opponent takes on c4. He plays bishop takes c4. So now, if white goes into the endgame, like queen takes d1, rook takes d1, well, I said white. If black goes into the endgame with queen takes d1, rook takes d1, it's very confusing now, because actually the player with the white pieces is playing with the black pieces, or rather the setup, but like that. So anyway, if black takes on d1, rook takes d1, it could be an issue getting into the game with the pieces. And yeah, white has a pretty easy way forward, and the square b5 could be used, and the bishop on c1 is not easy to develop, and that position is basically symmetrical, but the advantage will go to the of course the side with the tempo more, right? Plays h6, plays b3, and then plays e5. So that was the intention of h6, was to stop any ideas of knight g5. Like he didn't want to play, he wants to play e5, but he doesn't want to play to allow, excuse me, knight g5, maybe followed by knight e4, something like this. So he plays h6, b3, e5, queen c2, stopping any ideas of e4, because e4 would destabilize white's center. Queen c2, black is not out of the woods yet. Bishop b2, rook d8, and a very strong move is knight d2. So the knight wants to make its way into the square. e4 in some variations. Some variations could also go to e4, to c4. So plays bishop to e6, and plays h6, h3, some kind of way to move. Rook c8, rook d1. So they are both developing, and then he exchanges and plays knight c4. Bishop e7. Notice that bishop c7 does not help, because if you play bishop c7, white would play knight b5, yeah, and just very strong control of look at all those black squares that are being sort of attacked, right? So he plays bishop b7, and the knight jumps into that weak square, grabs, and white uses the pattern, which is an X-ray, to play knight b4, because this knight is very irritating and very strong. But okay, and then he plays queen takes. Queen f5 is a good move, attacks the rook. Rook e8, knight d5. Now all of a sudden, this initiative by white leads to some kind of a kingside attack. But black should be able to defend it. But Practically, maybe not so easy. Yeah, bishop takes e5 because we see these pieces. The rook will come to d7. G7 is also under attack. You've got some back rank issues with uh, with black and so on. So plays queen c6, rook d7, attacking the pawn on f7. Queen e6, and queen takes e6. Rook takes e6. Right. Position is very much close to equality, but it's not yet equal. And the irritating thing about these positions is that you know it's equal, but the player who has the initiative here, white, can press forever. So if we're to ask, well, what is white playing for? This is very interesting because person who's actually made these positions very popular in terms of showing that they can be very dangerous is none other than Magnus Carlsen. Both sides have got same color bishops, black squared bishops, but there's a big difference. The difference is that these two pieces here, the rook on d7 and the bishop on e5, potentially they can attack the pawn on g7. This is the problem. This is the main problem for black. And for black to get counterplay, black cannot just sit. Black must also try to get to f2 because this is where his two pieces could coordinate. So now when we say, okay, g7 is to be attacked, so now that's when we get to see the strategic idea. Okay, let's make bishop d4 first. So what is white's strategic idea? White's strategic idea is to play the pawn to g6. No, not that move. So what white would play, g4 as an example, king g2, h4, g5, f4, f5, g6, right? And then once white plays g6, then that target on g7 is exposed. And but remember, when white plays g6, then the king itself also becomes gets into danger because there could be some back rank mates. So this is the whole idea. Right. So rook c6 is logical. g4, we start. Rook c1 check, king g2, rook b1, rook takes b7, so they take. And then plays rook a7 to stop the a pawn from moving, right? Rook a3 to maybe support it, h4. So the plan is rolled out. So the threat is g5 and then g6. Okay, rook a2. Notice that black is also working. This is a fantastic struggle here. Very nice endgame. Black is having ideas of playing bishop to e1 to also get counterplay against white. So white must of course get out of this pattern. Notice it goes to f1. Not to allow bishop e1. Yeah, black cannot play rook a1 here because the bishop is of course there. So rook c2, g5, grabs. Rook c1 check, king g2, and plays bishop to c5. So this is a very interesting position and still a draw, by the way, if the opponent defends properly. And I analyzed this position with the aid of the computer, you know, to make sense, because the way the game went in the game, Giri won a pawn with rook takes a5, but this should still have been a draw. It's not enough. You don't have enough space to move the pawn. That's the problem. And if black can stop the king from coming across and cut the king off and bring the other king, then white cannot really do much. So the question then, you know, that I had was, I'm sure Giri thought about it as well. Can white try something here? There's a very nice trick here that he can try, but it doesn't necessarily work. But maybe for practical reasons, to try and instead of taking the pawn to play rook c7, so it's a pin. Then bishop a3 must be played, right? And now to play rook b7. So notice now what is happening, because now our rook is no longer on a7, but it's on b7. Now if bishop c5, The correct move is rook c6 here in this position. This is the move that the computer suggests. Rook c6 to stop g6. And then if you play rook a7, bishop c5, and then we have the same story as similar as in the game, yeah? Rook takes a5, and we get to the same position, more or less. But that would be the correct one. But if black doesn't find rook c6, but plays bishop c5 anyway, the big difference is now that g6 happens. That is the difference. That is the difference. And now black would have been tricked, you see. And the point is that there is no bishop takes d4, of course, because of checkmate. This is what I was talking about. You see that pawn on g6 is so strong. King cannot get out, yeah? Rook c8, rook takes c8, checkmate anyway. Problems, yeah? And yeah, what do you do here? Okay, so this would be a big problem for black, right? But nonetheless, as we saw, rook c6 would still lead to the game. So Giri played rook takes a5, bishop takes d4, pawn takes, and then rook c3. Correct? Cutting the king off. He plays f3, rook d3, and now rook d5. The king approaches, and rook d1. So the main thing really is to stop the king from getting to the queen side, the white king, and he tries king f5, this is correct. And right here, if black does not play the check, then black could lose this because white could play, let's say, rook a5. And then what I was talking about, get the king to the queen side. And then the king would shepherd the pawn. You see what I mean? But unfortunately, there's a rook e1 check here, and like this, it's a draw. It's a draw. Rook a1, rook a3 again, brilliant, cutting the king off. So Giri tries again to go around. The advantage for Giri is that he's playing without risk here, and he can play this forever. And that's what happens, you know. He just kept playing and playing and playing and playing, and at some point the opponent is under so much psychological pressure and pressure of the tournament situation that making a draw, I mean, a blunder, the chance of a blunder are heightened, né? So rook e7 check, king e8, rook c7. He tries, but doesn't matter. Should be a draw. And right here, fatigue hits the opponent. King d5, the same thing as happening, and there's no progress. It's a draw, unfortunately, for Giri. Then you would have to share the tournament. Yeah. But the opponent plays king e7. And now look at the difference. Now king e5. You see, now the king is allowed to go to the inside. And now we shall see that this is now a very not easy, but now white is winning. Yeah, white, because the king is playing a very important role, right? So now, if you're to imagine in such a situation like this, imagine, let's say, white plays rook f2, for example. I can play check, and now I will play rook, for example, here, threatening check. And if you play this check, I can play king f6, no? And then I would chomp both your pawns. I'll defend this guy, chomp your pawns, and then I'm winning. Yeah. So it's difficult now, the position for black. So he tries to play this rook e4 is a very good move. Plays rook d2 and another move, rook d3. He has to stop d6 and now rook a1. But Giri has played this beautifully because he makes sure that the check that will happen on e3, when he gets out of the check with king d4, he attacks the rook, thus buying himself time. No? Very beautiful. King d4, nice. Rook b3. Now we have this check. But now notice king d6, king c4. Taking the pawn is maybe not so smart, because, you know, when you take this pawn, the king has got nowhere to go. Yeah, you should be careful. For example, let's say rook b4 check. I'm making an example here. King c3. Maybe I can play king rook c4 check. Mhm. That what is it called? Crazy rook or hero, whatever. I don't know. There's some name for it. Because the point is that if you play king takes c4, then it's stalemate. I cannot move. It's black. I cannot play anything. It's a draw. So that's why you still have to be very careful. And Kiri plays king c4. The endgames are beautiful. Rook e3, rook takes f7, and now it's winning. Yeah, f5 it creates a pass pawn, and there we are. This is lost unfortunately. Um, it's too much. Yeah, that's another beautiful move. King f8, check, king e7, and rook a8. Beautiful move. Now you're in trouble because if you play king d7, check, and you lose the rook, and the rook cannot move. And a very nice game that Kiri played, and I think it deserved the tournament win. Um, I'm also happy to see him come back. He's one of the grandmasters who've always been giving Carlsen a run for his money, right? Um, so I think it would do a world of good for him to win an Open, because in terms of confidence and so on. So yeah, I think we will be seeing. I was reading somewhere that he gained some points, of course, and he's now gone up. He's going to be number 12 in the world now, Kiri. So he's making his way back into the top 10. Beautiful, great to see. And definitely one of those characters you want to see doing well. Right. And so yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed this coverage, dear viewer. I certainly enjoyed this tournament. Very nice tournament. Yeah, I think Giri won first prize was what, 15,000 US dollars, I think. Nice for an open tournament. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, we'll be, of course, please do keep an eye out. I'll be looking at there are many very interesting events happening around the world, and I certainly will be following. And yeah, so please like, share, comment, subscribe, please, if you haven't, and so on. And yeah, till next time, what I will say is, yeah, have a good one, and till we meet again, checkmate.